Well, look at all y'all here. See, like with TED Talks, it's kind of like you got to make it your own. You got to own it. You got to let your identity and your style flow. So, for me, I always got to be an original. So I grew up like on hip hop back in the 90s, like some real good quality rap music. So what we do in hip hop, we give shout outs. So I give shout outs to y'all out there in the crowd. I give shout outs to Miss Clementine Churchill. She knows who she is. And I give shout outs to Yoshi. He knows who he is too. So, welcome to Rejection Heartbreak Hotel. Population us right now in this room. So when this event came across my desk in May, the emergence concept, the theme of emergence, I had to resonate a little bit. And what I thought about in that May, dealing with rejection, dealing with family situations back home in the Sacramento, California area, family originates from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I thought about rejection and every rejection that I've gone through in my life. As people play drums in the back. Boom. I got some good ears, I'm just saying. I got them from my granddaddy. So, sorry, you're not my type. That's one form of rejection, right? So the rejection tonight I'm going to talk about, though, relates to each and every one of y'all right now. SAS is high rigor, it's high academics, right? The goal is to get to a university and flourish. But sometimes when we're on that pathway, as families, as students, and so forth, rejection meets us. And it can be heartbreaking, it can be disappointing, the feeling of failure. So this focus is on my rejection when I try to enter my graduate studies program to become a school psychologist. So, ever since I was young, when I was thinking about this emergence theme, ever since I was been young, I've had this rejection kind of thing, like I said. Whether it's failing a test, whether it's not getting a job, whether it's having a grade school crush, singing in your 6th grade talent show, said crush, and, not getting even a thank you or a hug. I know, that's heartbreaking. But you see, rejection takes on so many different forms. So, ever since I was young, I always would have young and old come and ask me for advice. They tell me about their problems. Like I said, people my age and people 30 years older than me. It was an odd situation when I think back at it. But for some reason, the people that would come to me felt that I had the ability to give them something, to be a giver. Something in my heart spoke, and they listened, and they appreciated that. These are my siblings right here. This is in 94, and so we added one more, and you'll probably see that later. So it's a trait that I like to, thank my father for. When we're thinking about our identity, when we're thinking of emergence, we have to thank the ancestors or our family structures or mentors or whoever. So that nurturing kind of component, the ability to try to help, is something that I think I inherited from my father, who in turn inherited from his mother. This is a picture of me in Louisiana. And of course, my mother, also a caring, kind woman who would always put the needs of others first before her. And when you have 5 children and the 4th youngest of 13 kids, you kind of learn that you have to, pick your battles and give. Just saying. So we go to 2008, UC Davis graduated with my bachelor's in psychology, minor in black studies. So when I was about to go on this path of trying to become a school psychologist, because, like I said, I always was told that I give good advice, as well as having a father who's a community college math professor. I've always been around school, so I knew that was what I wanted for my path and my destiny. So I found a program that fit the needs that I speak of to become a qualified school psychologist, California State University, Sacramento. This is considered one of the top programs in our area in Northern California, if not more so because it's accredited by our national association, and well as a coordinator of this program is the president of both our state as well as national organization. So this is big time in my mind. And this is also a competitive program too. So from the professors that I used to talk to at this time, they only accept 10 or 15 something applicants out of 50 plus. That's a small percentage. Let's go back. So I met a professor who served as my mentor over that summer of 2008. She told me the things that I needed to do to assemble an application in order to have a chance to get into this program. So volunteer hours at my kid's sister's elementary school. getting letters of recommendation from doctorate-level professionals, as well as taking additional coursework. I felt like, and this is the school that I volunteered at for years and years, I felt like I was prepared for this journey to take this destiny by the hand. So I show up to this interview a year later. Education department. I go upstairs as a panel of 3 people, including my mentor, who tried to coach me into the program. I sit there, I interview, there's about 10 questions or so. I'm not nervous because I prepared for this a year and basically my whole life. The funny thing is, I'm sitting there and I'm interviewing with this panel, and the mentor even comments on the fact that it seemed like I was well prepared. She was surprised. It was like I actually took the time to get ready for this interview. That is something that still lingers with me today. Because at the end of the day, if you want something so bad, you're going to prepare, you're going to plan, you're going to focus, you're going to make something that's going to manifest itself into your reality, as destiny may be. Funny thing is, even though I left that interview, felt good about it, got compliments on how prepared I was, there was a second round of interviews. Unprecedented. Unprecedented. Apparently, they had a record number of applications this year. Thus, they had to have a second round of interviews, oddly enough. So, rewind, back to the same place, a different panel. Questions are kind of the same, much about counseling, individual and group. How do you help kids with depression, anxiety, self-worth, self-esteem, family issues? How do you help them if they have been assessed as having a learning difference or a learning disability, and other things of that nature? But the vibe of this particular interview felt different to me. There was hardly any smiles from this one panel member, because it was a completely new panel. He didn't really smile at all, and I didn't really feel that vibe with him that I felt with the first round of interview panel. So, at the end of the interview, he looks at me. Like I said, he didn't smile, one little iota of a smile. He tells me the reason we're having this interview is because record number, blah, 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 and not everybody's going to get into this program. That's when I knew, literally right at that second, that I wasn't getting in this program. Literally right at that second. And a week later, the letter comes in the mail. It's a small envelope, so you know that's not a good sign. If you ever apply to a college or anything, a small envelope's not a good sign. Welcome back to Rejection, Heartbreak Hotel, population us. But in this moment in time, population was me. I was disappointed. I was let down. I just felt like I'd given my all. And usually with rejection, it comes from the fact that we do feel like we give our all, and we're not recognized for that. So, the mentor decides to send me an email. She says, I want to talk to you about the fact that you didn't get into this program. I go to her office, sitting there. It's a bright blue sky day, all the way upstairs. She tells me, Jeremy, the reason you didn't get into this program was because that interview panel felt you were too confident in your interview. Her exact quote. I was shocked and stunned. So, trying to practice, mindfulness and patience, I said, I can understand how that's considered cocky. She said, nobody thought you were cocky. It's just that you have such an intense personality that it might overwhelm people. And people that you meet in your work might not want to work with you because they might think that you know it all. The sad part about this, and I always mention, my ethnic identity. I'm mother's Creole, Native American bloodline, white, French bloodline, African American, father's African American. But at the end of the day, identifiably, I am black. I'm Black American, African American, however you define it. So, when you hear things about that you're too confident, that you're too intense, that's language, right? And it's kind of language that has historical-based narratives to it, whether qualitative or quantitative. The other has always been seen, at least in American culture, as being something to regulate. Whether you're black, whether you're brown, whether you're LGBTQ+, whether you're a woman, minority in general. The other has always been something that is feared. So when you hear about too intense, that's not language that you often hear for the other side. You hear passionate, you hear driven, you hear ambitious. So to say that somebody is too intense or too confident, going against everything that we're taught in terms of preparing for an interview, that was telling, especially considering you have an organization in terms of Sacramento State, their program. It's mostly white professorship. In a job occupation that is mostly white in terms of the people who work it. In a system in terms of special education, like I said, kids with learning disabilities and other learning struggles or differences, the other, that is mostly overrepresented by black and brown souls. So it made no sense, realistically or logically to me. These are some of the slides that I'm referencing. So one of the things that I always have to do, especially when it comes to rejection, is understand how people see me. Is this double consciousness concept that the philosopher W.E.B. Du Bois talks about. Always being mindful that how you are portrayed in people's eyes is playing right in front of you, and trying to be careful not to overwhelm them. But at the end of the day, why should I or any person be doing that? So, like I said, welcome to disappointment, AKA, the sister city of rejection. The thing about it is, when I was there thinking about all of this in, this presentation, I had to reflect on how did I overcome my rejection? How have I overcome rejections, period? Because I've been rejected a lot, just saying. So research would show, there's a whole body of research that talks about the concept of rejection. It talks about how when people have to recall a rejection on MRI, the brain activity that would light up, usually with physical pain, lights up. That's how powerful rejection is, right? Rejection to some researchers goes back to hunter and gatherer times when we were tribes. And if we got kicked out of the tribe, we had to fend for ourselves. And that usually meant not too good of results in terms of going it alone. Rejection is one of the constant emotional wounds that we self-inflict over and over again. When we think about it, we are very self-critical. We don't usually find ourselves going to the positive. We're very self-critical. I should have studied harder. I should have, gone in and done this, done that. I should have wrote it like this. I should have wrote it like that. Constantly, we are self-rejecting ourselves as well. So, I'm going to give you some secrets to the transformative power of rejection. And this is things that I see in hindsight, especially working in this school right here, that we all, I feel, can benefit from. Research-based kind of suggestions. Positivity. There's a whole discipline of psychology. If you're taking psychology classes here, you probably have heard of the concept of positive psychology. The psychology of positivity, things of that nature. With most things that are medical or clinical, we usually go for the negative. We go for the maladaptive. Positive psychology wants to flip that. Wants you to look at what makes you happy, what makes you thankful, what gives you gratitude. And research has shown with exercise, a strong support system, as well as a positive mindset, just being thankful can result in goal attainment, better energy, and so forth. Because with rejection impacts, like I said, our self-esteem. It also impacts our self-worth and even our intelligence. Because if you're feeling disappointed, you're not going to be able to think clearly. Resilience is something we also try to talk about in this school as well. The ability that when one door closes, we formulate a plan to keep going, to be resilient, to not give up, to not surrender. The heart of a champion in some ways. Mindsets is also what we talk about, fixed and growth mindset. As simple as this, the belief in your change ability, your change potential, and the ability of others to change as well and to grow. Very important. And as I've mentioned before, support systems. But as well as this, empathy and hope. Because if you feel like this is the end, this black and white thinking, and not see the world as vibrant as it is, and the possible opportunities and possibilities, then sometimes that rejection is going to feel as cold as the winter in Chicago. And I posted that because I know some people are in the crowd from Chicago as well, probably too. Yeah. So the funny thing is, even back then, around 2009 and 2010, that story I mentioned, I had the elements and the secrets of overcoming rejection all along. I have beautiful parents back home that love me dearly. I have 4 siblings, beautiful siblings, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, oldest of 5, that love me for who I am, and I love them dearly. I took that rejection and pain, and like I do with any disappointment and heartache, I make something from it. Creativity is powerful, and it's something we need to preach even more so. I write poetry. I do music. And then all of that, during that time, as well as adding another little bit of volunteer hours, I reapplied to this program because they weren't going to shut the door on Jeremy D. Wayne Greene. And they actually gave me another interview, so that was great. I sit there, the same professor, the coordinator of this program, who I didn't realize was the coordinator of this program like I've probably mentioned earlier, but he was, coordinator of the program, sat there. I'm talking, I'm answering the same questions I answered a year ago, exact same questions. But he was the only one that said a different question. He said, how do you handle disappointment? And I kind of knew that, okay, maybe it was you all along who didn't think I was a fit last year. I told him this answer. I said, disappointment comes from expectations. If we don't expect to be disappointed sometimes, we don't have the ability to overcome and emerge into something better. That was the first time I saw a genuine smile from him. I thought about and I told him about the kids I worked with in my sister's elementary school, third grade class, and how even with the anger and frustration and pain that would come across their face like sudden storms, they were resilient. They can get back to smiling and being happy and playful. That resiliency inspired me. So, as I said, I got in this program, excellent cohort that became family because you need that support system in any challenging kind of situation. And, funny enough, our master's program has a cumulative master's exam, and I ended up tying for the highest score on that final master's exam. So I'm going to close us with a little bit. So the thing is, with rejection, I didn't let it hold me down, and I'm hoping that as students and as families, and shout outs to the families because you are the biggest support system in your children's lives, that these are research-based evidence type of methods to help them overcome rejection and transform it into something better. When my mentor came to my school that I was working at a few years after my graduation at Thomas High School, I was working with one of their graduate students at the time. I pointed at my name, and I said to her, I said, this is because of you. Because even if that panel didn't believe in the good in me, she saw the good in me. And with tears in her eyes, she said, I always knew you would do it. So whether it's rejection from a school or whether it's rejections from people that you still care for and love, like the aforementioned Clementine Churchill, you have to believe in your dreams. We tell SAS students they have the courage to live their dreams. And if not for the rejections I've been through and the constant resiliency that I practice in the support system that I mentioned, I would not be standing here today on this stage in Shanghai at a school with such historical records, as well as in a city of such historical prestige. Like I said, we tell you to have the courage to live your dreams, but that's also having the courage to take those rejections, have no regrets. Well, maybe, I like to say a little rhyme, reject your regrets. Do something like that. And even with all the rejections I went through, even in this is a moment in time, right? I'm going to let these rejections shine, hopefully to inspire. Because in the end of the day, like my grandmother would say, all is well. Thank you so much.